Hi there, and welcome to another edition of Israel Explained. Is this the biggest scandal in the history of Israel edition? I guess we'll see. But here are the details of what's going on right now with the confidential document um, leak scandal. So, people were arrested, the exact number still isn't known, on suspicion of leaking confidential documents to um, friendly journalistic outlets back in September. There may also have been other leaks involved. There is still a gag order on the whole affair. Important to note that there's been a gag order on this. All Israel has been talking about nothing else for days. Now there's been a partial lift of the gag order, and so everything I'm going to talk about has been revealed publicly in Israeli media. There's some other things, most of which I don't know about. Mostly I've just heard rumors about what it might be that haven't appeared yet. So there's definitely more to this scandal than we already know. So I'll try to update as more things come out here and on Twitter on my feed at academic_LA. So we have several individuals who have been arrested. What have they been arrested for? They've been arrested for what the IDF and the Shin Bet are calling harming the war effort in Gaza. They're saying that these leaks are not only illegal because they're confidential documents, but also they materially affect the war effort in two ways. Way number one, they compromise assets in Gaza, possibly elsewhere, that have brought information out. When you have classified information, um, knowing what the information is, revealing it, could reveal the identity of the person who provided it, and that could put them in danger. That could put their lives in danger and also put the information in danger, future sources of information. That's one thing. The other thing is that it's believed that these leaks were intended to scuttle the hostage deal between Israel and Hamas that was shaping up at the end of July and the beginning of September. So, if you remember what happened, let's go back to the timeline. In July, Israel and Hamas were the closest they had ever been to reaching a second hostage deal. There was one back in 2023, and there was talk about a second hostage deal. I don't know if it would have succeeded, but the two sides were closer than they had ever been. On July 27th, Netanyahu released a document of quote unquote clarifications, where he said there can't be a deal unless Israel keeps the Rafah crossing and also has security um, apparatus set up in the Netzarim corridor. There were attempts after that to settle those differences, but ultimately the deal collapsed. And the new conditions that Netanyahu raised were definitely one of the main reasons for that, probably the main reason at that point. On September 3rd, so a week later, 6 Israeli hostages were executed by Hamas. Those hostages included Hirsch Golden Kolin. There was a massive outcry in Israel over the execution because many people felt that if Netanyahu had not given further conditions as he had, their lives would have been saved. Is that true? Hard to say, but a lot of people felt that way. So Netanyahu's government was in a lot of trouble. They had reached a nadir of popularity as a result. Then, two weird stories appeared in the international press. On September 6th, the Bild, the yellowish German newspaper, published an article with a document claiming that it showed that Israel wanted a ceasefire, but Hamas did not. It was a document that was purported to have been written by a Hamas commander, and it said, allegedly, Hamas did not want a ceasefire. Um, the document, as it appeared, didn't really say that, but that's how it was framed. And apparently, the document was also altered to make it seem like Hamas did not want a ceasefire, when in fact the document said that under certain conditions, Hamas would want a ceasefire. So that was one article that seemed to show that it wasn't Netanyahu's fault that there wasn't a ceasefire. Then another article came out in the Jewish Chronicle. In that article, it said that Sinwar had plans to smuggle hostages out through the Philadelphia corridor to take them to Iran, and that's one of the reasons Israel had to maintain the Philadelphia corridor. As soon as that came out, a lot of eyebrows, to put it mildly, were raised in the Israeli intelligence community because they had no intel saying that. In fact, they seriously doubted that that was the case. So a few days later, the IDF announced that they were starting an investigation into how this story had been released, why it had been released. They also expanded that investigation to the build, and they called it part of a disinformation campaign. This is already back in September. So the fact that people are being arrested for this is not that surprising. The suspicions that the IDF had, that the Shabak had, were taken to the police, and the police has been cooperating with them. We don't know the identities of all the individuals who have been arrested. We do know the identity of one, and that person is being set up by the Netanyahu circle as the fall guy. He's a spokesperson for the CEO of the Prime Minister's office. This individual has been attending meetings and handling classified documents for months, but he failed to obtain the necessary clearance to deal with those documents. The IDF and the Shin Bet warned Netanyahu, warned his office that he should be kept away from these meetings and these documents, and they continued to allow this individual access to the documents. Right now, Netanyahu is claiming that he doesn't know the person didn't work for him, but there is evidence that Netanyahu talked to him daily. There are also several pictures of them together. Some of those pictures have appeared in the press because Israeli journalists were concerned at why this individual was allowed to attend meetings when he did not have the security clearance. As you can imagine, this scandal has the potential to be earth shattering. The implication here, unproven, is that Netanyahu leaked confidential information in a way that compromises security of Israel in order to scuttle a deal that would have released Israeli hostages. That is unconscionable. Two questions arise from this. One, is that true? Or was it other elements in the prime minister's office that did this? Was it this individual on his own? We will see. The person we're talking about is being investigated by the Israeli police. We'll see what he says. We'll see what the other people say. Of course, there's always a good chance Netanyahu insulated himself from this in a similar way to how Nixon insulated himself from Watergate. And Netanyahu was not dumb enough to leave tapes. The other question is, even if it becomes clear that Netanyahu was involved in this, which I'm not sure will happen, would this actually topple Netanyahu? In the past, we probably would say, yes, this is such a severe scandal. But we've seen that in the current climate, the current global climate, leaders who are suspected of crimes have ways of staying in power by blaming the police, the deep state, the media for creating a story. Those measures have been very effective. We've seen a similar confidential document issue with Trump that doesn't seem to have harmed his political career all that much. we do live in a world right now where this sort of scandal harming national security doesn't seem to be a career ender. I deeply hope that I'm wrong about that. I have one question from Pratchett Guyman, longtime watcher, listener. He asked me the following. The IDF recently killed a Hamas commando who it turns out was a member of UNRWA, which the IDF says they told UNRWA months ago. UNRWA said they didn't get enough info to do anything. Which of the two messed up here? So the short answer to that is it's really hard for me to know. But we're talking about an individual called Muhammad Abu Tawi, who was actively involved in October 7th and was in charge of commanding a group that killed and kidnapped several Israelis in Kibbutz Re'im. The IDF says that they gave this information to UNRWA well in advance of the assassination. UNRWA have admitted that they got this information, but said that it's not sufficient. I think that an organization like that, with so many suspicions about cooperation with terrorism, probably should have been a lot more careful and arrested this individual or at least fired them or something like that. Um, there's a limit to how much classified intelligence information the IDF is going to give to an organization that it distrusts so deeply. And so I would say that the IDF is probably not at fault here, and that UNRWA is. But this is based on limited information, and I did talk to an IDF source about this, and of course, they told me that they feel it was completely justified. So I don't have a very balanced view of this, but it seems to me like Israel was in the right on this issue. Okay, so that's it for this episode. If you like what I do here, consider supporting me on Patreon at Shael Media and listening to my History of the Land of Israel podcast wherever you get your podcasts. I will try to update this story because it is a very important one.